There was a rule for the river, and children in old Japan learned it before they learned to swim. If something comes up out of the water and speaks to you, do not run, do not fight it, do not scream. Bow to it, bow low, and slowly, and wait. Because it is more polite than you are, and that is how you kill it. This is the Kappa, the river child. Green skin, or red, depending on who you ask. A beak, a turtle's shell, webbed hands, the body of a boy of about 10 years old, and the strength to pull a horse backwards into a river. And on top of its head, a shallow dish, filled with water. That dish is everything. As long as there is water in it, the Kappa is stronger than any man alive. Spill it, and it is nothing, which is why you bow, because it will bow back. Today, where the Kappa came from, why an entire province once went to war with them, and what people were actually finding in the water. Long before anyone drew a Kappa, Japan was afraid of the water, and gave that fear a shape. In the Nihon Shoki, the oldest official chronicle of the country, there is a pool in a river in the province of Kappa. Something lives in it. Travelers who pass die of its poison. A local official named Agatamori goes down to the water. He throws 3 gourds onto the surface and makes the thing an offer. Sink these, and I will leave you alone. Fail, and I will kill you. The gourds float. They will not go under. He kills it, and everything else living at the bottom of that pool, and the chronicle says the water turned red. That creature was not a Kappa, it was a Mizuchi, a water serpent, a river god with teeth. But look at what is already there, in the 8th century, a spirit that owns a specific pool, a human being who does not pray to it, but challenges it, and a contest with rules, decided by an object floating on water. Change the serpent into a small green child and you have almost everything. The other origin story is stranger, and much more human. In it, the Kappa was made. The tale goes that a master carpenter, in some versions building a palace, in some versions a bridge, was running out of time and men, so he cut human figures out of straw, or wood, and breathed enough life into them to carry timber. They worked. The building was finished. And then he had 99 of them and no more use for them, so he threw them in the river and told them to feed themselves. That is a folk tale, but it is a folk tale about disposable labor, told by the kind of people who did the labor. Japan built its capitals and its riverbanks on the backs of men who were worked through the flood season, and were not always counted afterwards. The Kappa, in this version, is not a demon at all. It is what is left in the water when you are finished with someone. There is no single Kappa, and this is one of the strangest things about it. Go 100 kilometers in any direction and the creature changes its name, its shape, and its habits. In the far north, in Tohoku, it is the Medici. In Kagoshima in the deep south, it is the Girappa, thinner, longer-limbed, and it stands. In the west it is the Emko, the monkey, and it is covered in hair rather than scales. In Kyushu there is the Hyasube, which is bald and hideous, and has a laugh people said would kill you if you heard it. And in Edo period books written by educated men, it is filed under a Chinese word borrowed to make it respectable, Suiko, the water tiger. Then there is the seasonal version. In parts of Japan people said the Kappa was not a river creature at all, that in autumn it climbed into the mountains and became a Yama-ero, a mountain child, and in spring it came back down and turned into a Kappa again. The same being, half the year in the water, half the year in the trees, which should sound familiar, if you were here last week. Now, what it actually does. The single most common Kappa story in Japan is not a story about a child, it is a story about a horse. It is called Koma-hiki, horse pulling. A horse is left at the water's edge to drink. Something takes hold of its reins and pulls, trying to drag a 500-kilo animal backwards into the river. And in almost every version, the Kappa loses. The horse panics, bolts for the village, and drags the Kappa with it, up the bank, across the fields, into a stable or a courtyard, where it collapses in the dirt in front of a crowd of people. Out of the water, the dish on its head runs dry, and the most feared creature on that river is suddenly a small, wet, terrified thing that everyone can see. This is where the etiquette comes in, and it is the reason the Kappa is the most peculiar monster in Japan. It cannot break a promise, it cannot refuse a challenge, and it cannot let a bow go unreturned. So the instruction passed down to children was simply this: bow. The Kappa, unable to do otherwise, bows back, and the water in its dish pours out onto the ground. There were other rules. It loves sumo, and will demand a match from a grown man on an empty riverbank. The trick was to bow first and wrestle second. It loves cucumbers, which is why families would write a child's name on a cucumber and float it down the river, a payment made in advance, so the river would know that one was spoken for. And in some districts, before the summer festival, no one would eat a cucumber at all. You do not eat what belongs to the thing in the water. Think about what this actually is: a culture facing a genuine annual death toll, drownings, floods, irrigation channels, children sent to fetch water, and instead of despair, it produces a set of instructions: bow, offer, don't swim in that pool, be polite, and you will come home. It is a monster designed to be survivable. And then there are the documents. Across Japan, hundreds of households once kept a piece of paper called a wabi-jaman, an apology letter, signed, supposedly, by a Kappa. The story behind them is nearly always the same. The creature reaches for a woman, or a horse, or grabs at someone in an outhouse, and someone quick with a blade takes its arm off. The Kappa comes back that night, not to take revenge, to negotiate. It wants the arm. The stories insist that within a few days it can still be reattached, and in exchange it offers two things: a written promise never to touch anyone in that village again, and a recipe, a medicine, usually for wounds, burns, or setting broken bones. That is not a small detail. Real families in Niigata and across Kyushu ran real businesses on those recipes, well into the modern era. Bone setters who advertised, in plain print, that their technique came from a Kappa. And there is a wonderful crack in the record here. Folklorists tracing the paperwork found that many of those medicines had an older sales pitch. The secret had originally come from a tengu. At some point, the mountain stopped selling, and the river started. By 1820, the subject had reached the highest level of Japanese scholarship. A Confucian scholar named Koga Toan, who taught at the shogunate's own academy, compiled a work called the Suiko Kōryaku, a study of the water tiger. It is not a book of stories, it is a case file. Koga collected reports out of the domains, sightings, captures, sworn statements, physical descriptions. A shogunal physician later added the sketches, drawing after drawing of things people said they had pulled out of the water, no two alike. He was still adding to it 19 years later. The manuscript survives in the National Archives today. Last week, an intellectual named Hirata Atsutane spent years interviewing a boy who claimed to have lived with tengu. This is the same instinct, one generation later, pointed at the water. Educated men in Edo, Japan did not simply dismiss this, they took statements. Which brings us to the war. In Kumamoto they tell it like history, and it involves a man who genuinely existed. Kato Kiyomasa, general, castle builder, one of the hardest men of the 16th century. The Kuma River ran through his domain, and the Kuma River, they said, belonged to a Kappa clan led by a chief called Kyosenbo, 9,000, because that is how many of them there were. The legend gives two reasons for what happened next. In one, they simply took too many people. In the other, they drowned a boy Kiyomasa loved. Either way, the Lord of Higo declared war on a river. And he did not do it with soldiers. He knew the one thing every Kappa is afraid of: monkeys. Kiyomasa is said to have called in monkeys from across Kyushu and turned them loose along the water, until 9,000 Kappa abandoned the Kuma River entirely, and fled north. They arrived at the Chikugo River, in the domain of the Arima clan, and asked for asylum. They were granted it, on terms: harm no person, harm no livestock, and in return, they were placed under the protection of the water shrine at Kurume, and given a job: guard the river, watch the floods, look after the people you used to drown. An entire population of monsters, defeated, relocated, and put to work. There is no other legend in Japan quite like it, and the towns along that river have never stopped taking it seriously. So what were people finding? Start with the hardest part. Among all the Kappa's habits, one is universal. It reaches into a person and takes out the shirikatama, a small ball, said to sit just inside the anus, holding the life in place. Without it, the body is empty, it floats. Folklorists have an unhappy explanation for that, and it is almost certainly right. When a person drowns, the muscles relax. Bodies were recovered from rivers by villagers, not by doctors. And what they saw, over and over, was a corpse that appeared to have had something removed from it. They were not inventing a monster out of nothing. They were reading a body, and reaching the wrong conclusion with total sincerity. The rest follows the water. Japan's rivers are short, steep and violent. Irrigation channels ran through every village. Children were sent to fetch water before they could swim. In hard years, and there were many hard years, not every infant who went into a river fell in. A grieving village needed the water to be somebody's fault. It was easier to say the river had taken them. And around all of that, real animals kept surfacing. The Japanese giant salamander, nearly 1.5 meters long, flat-headed, living in exactly those pools. The otter, which stands on its hind legs at dusk and looks, for 1 second, like a child in the reeds. Snapping turtles, with beaks that do not let go. None of those things is a kappa. But if you saw one in bad light, in a place where a boy had drowned the year before, you would have a name for it before you got home. The kappa never became history, and this is the part one like most. In 1910, Yanagita Kunio published the Tono Monogatari, the book that founded Japanese folklore studies. 5 of its tales are kappa reports, told to him as current events. The kappa of Tono are red, not green. You can go there. Behind Jikenji Temple, a small stream runs under the trees. Kappa Buchi, the kappa pool. At the temple gates stand guardian dogs with shallow hollows carved into their heads, so that when it rains, they fill, and the guardians of the temple have a kappa's dish. The tourist office sells a kappa fishing license, 220 yen, valid for 1 year. They will lend you a rod, and the bait is a cucumber. And in Tokyo, in the kitchenware district of Kappabashi, there is a temple called Sagenji. 200 years ago a local merchant spent his own fortune on drainage works to stop the flooding, and the story says the kappa of the Sumida River came out at night to help him dig. He is buried there, and in a small hall on the grounds, the temple keeps what it says is a kappa's hand. The Tendu looked down at Japan from the mountain and judged it. The kappa lives at the bottom of the field, in the water everybody needs, and it can be beaten by a 10-year-old with good manners. That is not a story about a monster. That is a country standing in front of the thing that kills its children every summer, and deciding, out loud, on purpose, that it can be bargained with. If you enjoyed this, subscribe. Every week I take one Japanese legend and follow it back to whatever is actually at the bottom of it. Next time, a woman so beautiful that an emperor fell ill, a court diviner who saw what she really was, and a stone in the mountains, sealed for 800 years, that split in half a few years ago. The nine-tailed fox.